with the software implementation and client success. So she's very important to our team. And then, of course, we have our guest today is Justin Hampton. Justin is the founder and CEO of Compensation Tool. It's a leading pay and survey management system that's out there. Now, it's kind of funny. When I met Justin, I don't know how long ago now, I think over 5 years ago, Justin.
Yeah.
I saw that, I just saw this guy that was putting out so many cool tools. And I think I even knew of Justin before he had the compensation tool. He was just putting out some interesting content on his personal website and so forth, and got really interested in what he was delivering, and then he came out with the compensation tool, which was super impressive, and I've been with him in that journey of building that tool, and it's been really exciting to see what he and his team has developed. But anyway, you'll be able to see everybody's bios here. Actually, I should advance the screen. We'll see everybody's bios here on the presentation, and also it'll be on CompTeam website, so you can go ahead and see that. So this mastermind, like I said, is the first in a series of discussion that CompTeam will host on reward systems. And this particular topic, we're going to talk about using data itself to make the best pay decisions. And anybody that's out there, I mean, they know that systems is really kind of if you really want to make a big difference in the organization or the people or the companies that you serve, these technology systems that are coming out are kind of like the low-hanging fruit. It used to be that these systems used to be super expensive and cost prohibitive only to the largest firms out there. And now the price has come down like a lot of HR systems. We've been in almost an HR system revolution for the past 5 years. And it's really, tools are really affordable. So that's why we're putting on this mastermind topic to make people and practitioners out there more aware of the tools that are available. So today in our discussion, we're gonna be talking about just the general discussion is about, you know, hey, are you still using spreadsheets? I mean, we want to make sure that you know, these systems are out there, why companies are making a change to this and so forth. Then we're going to have a few questions and answers throughout this call, and then and if you want to stay on for a demo of Justin's product, you can at the end. But before I hand over the mic, I want to talk about a few housekeeping items. First, about this discussion on the Zoom platform. It's important that, you know, we'd like to encourage discussion through the chat function. And so you can just use that button at the very bottom. So I'm sure everybody that's on this call now is probably a professional at Zoom, as we've used these platforms through the pandemic. I think everybody's really familiar with these tools. But just use that chat or even the QA button if you want to leave a question throughout the discussion, and feel free to use that. And any questions we don't get to during the call here, we'll raise back up and I'll email you with an answer to that after the presentation. Another thing that I want to bring up is we have, I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. So as a free gift to you, you can, at any time, you can schedule a 15-minute call with anybody on this session, and you can have a quick chat about anything that's on top of mind or you're concerned about. If you want to learn more about tools or compensation practices or just you know, just a network or whatever. And then also, if you'd like a more detailed demo of Justin's tool, you can reach out to him. So feel free to sign up at that anytime. If you don't want to see that box, just exit out at the top. You can bring it up later and so forth. Also on the CompTeam website, you'll see a link, or if you go there, you'll see our event links, which will have our next free mastermind, which we're having these sessions monthly. They're going to be on the second Tuesday of each month. And also you'll notice that we have the People Strategy Forum, which is held weekly every Wednesday. and that's an event that's been going on for you know, for over 6 months now, which has been very successful. People love those conversations. If you want to learn more about talent and people strategies around compensation and talent management, that's something to join up in. Okay, so I think we've gone through everything. Oh yeah, another thing is if you'd like to, we'd enjoy to, as we bring these up more and more, we'd like to have more participation in these. So feel free to share with your friends that we're starting this mastermind, and I'm really glad that everybody's here. So without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Justin. Justin, so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came about with this tool and so forth.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, Howard, Heather. I really do appreciate you guys having me on to talk about the HR and compensation systems. But about me, so I was a comp practitioner for about a dozen years and worked in all kinds of companies from small to large. So companies, with a couple of hundred folks, all the way up to companies, with several 100,000 folks. And I always had this kind of knack for developing processes that made things a little bit easier. And so one of the things I had done was created this Microsoft Access database to help manage our salary surveys. And we used that for a long time with a couple of different companies, and then built onto that to make it actually allow me to do market matching. And so we used that. I used that at one company, 2 companies, 3 companies, 4 companies, and said to myself, I think this actually works pretty well. And it scales out nicely for all different kinds of companies. So about 5 years ago, I actually started developing the compensation tool. So taking that Microsoft Access database and turning it into a web version. And, I was really naive when I got started with it. I thought the project would take 6 months, and 5 years later, we're still kind of rocking and rolling and developing it out. But it's been a really, I'm glad I had that naivety, because it's been a really rewarding experience, and I've learned so much by doing it. And I think one of the things that's really made it unique and such a good experience is, a lot of these tools, all kinds of tools that help professionals are, oftentimes it's by them for them, but very rarely is it by them as them for us. So I had the really kind of unique opportunity to develop the software throughout my career, starting off as an analyst all the way up to like the head of comp for a couple of different companies, for all different kinds of companies. And so one of the things we had to do is keep it simple, keep it scalable, and keep it as a tool that really works across all kinds of different needs, different kinds of companies, organizations, and industries. So that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years, and recently have made this my full-time role. So we're continuing to develop it out and growing the business and adding new features to it. So it's been really nice.
Yeah, I know that Justin, that I think it was a couple of years ago now when we were looking at compensation tool as it was being developed, and it's just those that are on the call just know that the compensation practices across the globe are significantly different. I mean, if in the U.S. we're dealing with base pay, and other places on the globe are fixed pay and so forth with allowances and premiums and so forth. And so it's great to have a tool that can look across the different types of surveys and bring some further meaning out of those. So yeah, thanks for making this more simple in our lives, Justin.
Justin, I got a question that, as a compensation practitioner, I have my spreadsheets, I have my databases. Why would I want to switch? What's the benefit of going to an automated solution?
So, I think there's a few, there's several good reasons, but I think there's a few that really come to mind first. And that's for really being able to consolidate your data. So one of the things I always found was if you're doing something once, you're probably going to do it twice, probably do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And so putting that initial investment of time and effort up front can really streamline and basically remove ongoing processes, because you built it in once. And then therefore going forward, you can always kind of have that, improved process, and you can make incremental improvements to it. One of the things I think we've done really well is we've consolidated all your salary surveys. So for companies that have, more than one survey, even if it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 surveys, we can put all those in one place and make it really searchable. And I think that's been really a nice thing to have, because No longer do you have to go over here and then go over here to grab, different, open up different surveys or different Excel spreadsheets and then combine all those together. We can actually tie all that into one spot. And then we can actually run different kind of analysis on that data. So with the salary surveys aren't inexpensive. And a lot of times you get a single spreadsheet. So what we wanted to do is really make you get more from your surveys than you have initially. So we've actually built, there's a dashboard for every single row of data in your salary survey. So you can really visualize all the information in addition to putting it side by side and kind of run analytic comparisons on your survey data from, not just one industry or one survey, but all kinds of data that's in your surveys. So I'll give you a quick example of something that we had a while back as I was a practitioner. So I was working for a company that had a marketing team of about 45 people. And they wanted to create a job for, I think, 7 different functions. So they wanted to have online marketing, brand marketing, channel marketing, digital marketing, marketing managers for 40 people. So, I mean, you're talking probably close to 42 jobs for 40 people. And one of the questions was like, how many different roles do we need? And I said, well, let's go back and look at the actual market data to see what's the difference between a digital marketing manager and a marketing manager. And what we can actually do with our software is take all that data from your surveys, put them side by side, so you can actually really visualize and see, is there a big differentiation with the market data? So in that particular instance, what we did was we put everything side by side, let the head of marketing review it. And he said, well, with the exception of 1 or 2 of these different functions, everything is priced and the market values are relatively the same. So essentially what we were able to do is take those, 7 different job subfamilies and consolidate them into 3 different job subfamilies that really kind of allowed for better career progression, but not making the job so specific that they had to manage 42 descriptions for 40 employees.
That's great.
And I remember those times where you had to go in and like you said, where all these software or these surveys are on paper or whatever, and we were flipping through, these different survey books and to look at information and do matches and do this all by hand. I mean, it took hours to put this stuff together. So I'm glad that you have a tool that helps us do this faster.
Yeah, and one of the things that we can do too is, as most companies are going to do, is they're going to age their data. We can automatically age the data. It's really easy to go in and update your aging factors, effective date, aging date. It's really easy to add additional surveys. But one of the other things we can do too is if you are a multinational company, I think Sam, Heather, I learned this with you guys originally, is multinational companies, the surveys are very different. And if you get into the specific industries, all those surveys have really kind of niche, very specific data around a specific industry. So what we were able to do is we can convert all the data or all the currencies into a single currency. So you can really kind of do these cost analysis, based on a singular currency. But the other thing that's really nice is we actually allow you to create user-defined or custom fields for your survey. So you can really load in all the data from your surveys into the compensation tool and be able to report and export on that data and tie that actually back into your market matches.
Mm-hmm.
Is it difficult to bring data in from different sources? Let's say I'm a company and I'm participating in 5 or 6 different surveys and have different cuts of the data based on populations. How difficult is it to load all that information in different formats?
So for setting up a new company, we typically are averaging a 3-day full implementation. So I think that's when we got started with the software. The very first time I was loading a new company, it took me about 3 weeks and about 32 tries because we just built this one giant spreadsheet to load everything in. And I went back to my engineering team and said, guys, there's no way this is going to work. So what we did was we created a really easy process to load salary surveys and employee data that's not only easy, but it's also really forgiving because I was fantastic at transposing first name and last name or mixing up job family and subfamily. So once you even load the data in, if you go back and realize that you've transposed a couple of fields or if the data didn't load properly, you can go in and edit how the data is mapped over. So it's made it a really straightforward process to update data and load data. And I would say that most companies that we work with now, once we go through the process to update all the employee or job data, most companies are actually just doing that without any assistance from us. And so obviously, I mean, we're going to continue to support and provide, X number of loads per year. But what we have found is most people, they'd rather not wait or get on the phone. They'd rather just load it themselves. So it's a really quick, efficient, forgiving way to upload data. With the surveys, it can be a little bit more onerous, but that's something we'll take care of for you. So for the majority of surveys, your Mercers, Radfords, Aons, Culpeper surveys, those all go into the software relatively straightforward. There are a couple of different surveys that take a little bit longer, but again, that's something that we do kind of for you on the back end. So all we need from you or any of our clients is just the raw survey data, and we'll load everything in for them.
Yeah, so Justin, let's back up a little bit. So, I mean, as far as thinking about some of these pain points of what clients, when you first get a client, they've done all of this stuff on spreadsheets in the past. And they're looking for a solution. I mean, what are the common pain points that you're seeing with your clients and how you solve them?
Sure. So some of the most common things that we see with new clients is they don't have everything in one place. So they may have 30 or 40 different spreadsheets that have a market match or a market pricing for each job. And sometimes they'll have their salary surveys in one place, and sometimes they'll have their jobs in another place. So the biggest pain points that we see with implementation, at least, is getting all the data together and making sure that it's at least accurate data that's close to what the expectation is. Because I think what we always can do is we can load everything into the compensation tool, but if the data is not clean, and actually sometimes this is really helpful, we'll load everything in, and once you can start visualizing that data and seeing things, oftentimes you'll start to find that, okay, we didn't actually realize that we had three of these jobs that are very similar, and maybe should be consolidated. So what we have started to see sometimes is folks, as they start loading the data in, they can view their data a lot more easily and kind of quickly identify things where they said, hey, we didn't actually realize from our HRIS tools that we have three analysts doing basically the same thing. And for whatever reason, this one might be a little bit higher or this one might be a little bit lower. But the reality of it is we want to actually consolidate all those roles into a single role and make market adjustments if we need to for certain departments or whatever it might be. So I think that's kind of one of the pain points that we see initially, and that we're actually kind of excited that we can start solving and troubleshooting right off the bat.
Yeah, I know a recent client I had, it had 1,500 employees, and they had over 800 job titles for these. And part of this initial survey matching, of course, was able to consolidate that down, and so that's an important part of the process. But a lot of it is just in the time required to do some of this manually. So Heather, I know that what's the amount of time? I know you and your team do some survey participation for clients. How long does it take to do the participation process without a system like this?
The participation process itself can be relatively simple, but where the heavy lifting really starts to come into play is collecting the data from our clients and pulling the data out of the multiple data sources, and then doing a little bit of a data scrub. So the benefits of using a tool like Justin has created for us is it becomes our warehouse. It becomes our data warehouse. And it's very easy for us to identify those jobs, identify the true participation match that we want to submit, rather than what we're using to make our composites or do our internal pricing. And then helping have all of the pay requirements that the survey provider is looking for. And it's easily exported. So time is a little different. And it's really how complex is the survey to what is it that we're looking to participate in, and where are we obtaining that data, and what kind of benchmarking activities are we doing?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of compensation practitioners on the call today, and one of the biggest things that that I remember is an issue as well is just, getting challenged from management or so forth. Goes, oh, why was this match selected, and or why are we doing this, or why are we using this survey? And it's great to have a system and all in one place where you can keep, notes and comments and track these things effectively, so that when you're challenged, you have an explanation. And of course, it's hard for us to remember things that happened 6 months ago, and when you were doing a detailed analysis of this. So these systems can really be helpful.
Well,
Yeah, one of the greatest features of tools that I see when completing the benchmarking practice is it's very easy to export a job family to a manager and say, hey, take a look at these. And it eliminates the versioning and the organization of a spreadsheet, because it's all there within compensation tool, which is a great feature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we actually, one of my biggest principles when I was a practitioner was just trying to be really transparent with folks. Because I think that everyone has a very strong opinion about compensation, and I think that's rightfully so. Because what it's doing is it's telling you this is what you're worth, and people can agree with that and they can disagree with that, and hopefully at least everyone feels like they're being paid fairly. But when we go to actually start market pricing jobs, when you're working with managers, I think a lot of times what you hear is we'll come back and we can say the market rate for this job is $75,000 a year. And then, oftentimes you'll hear a manager say that's either sounds right or I'll never be able to hire someone for that much. You must have the wrong matches. So I think one of the things that I always struggled with was trying to make sure the managers understood, here's what I'm looking at, here's what my process is. So oftentimes what I would do is share the job descriptions with them, and not just the job descriptions for that particular job, but maybe from an entire subfamily, just to say, here are my cards, here's everything I have to look at to really kind of determine what the market rate is. Help me understand where the difference is. And, tell me why you think this market data might be lower than your expectations. So we actually built a functionality in the compensation tool to actually allow you to send those market matches, just the job descriptions, to managers where they can actually put in their feedback. So there's like a drop-down form where they can say it's a good match, it's a bad match, where there's more or less responsibility. But they've also got the opportunity to put in their free-form text and their feedback. And I don't think that's a substitute for actually having the conversation. I think as a comp practitioner supporting companies, you're in a support role, and you really need to help managers understand kind of how we got to where we got to. But I think by giving them those job descriptions and asking for that feedback, it makes it a lot more collaborative and takes away a bit of the black box of, how are market rates determined? And so by doing that, I think by kind of treating people or treating your line managers or other business stakeholders, the same way you would treat another HR person, obviously barring kind of hiding or sharing confidential information, it always made the process a lot easier. And it was able to get a lot more buy-in from folks kind of going through those practices.
You're right. There's so much of an education process that's often missing. It's like all of a sudden, here comes this edict from compensation, and this is what they're telling me, and I have to go abide by it. And it's but when you take the time and you walk managers through the process and help them understand what the market data is, who the participants are, where the data is coming from, also understanding that this is the rate being paid for people in seats. It doesn't reflect, the amount of money you might need to pay to bring someone on board. It's just, as you said, it's you got to open up the conversation.
Yeah. And one of the things I always fell back on was, there's the art and the science of comp. And I always said, my job is never to make us match data in a spreadsheet. Our job is to make us competitive. And I think that's really trying to understand that, sure, the market data might say one thing, but what are we actually seeing? If we look at our recruiting data, is it taking us a really long time to bring folks on? Are we bringing everybody on really high in the range? And then look at the attrition data. Are we losing people because of pay? And so I think if you start looking at those different legs of the stool, you can really get a better picture of, why are people leaving? Are they leaving for comp? Why can't we hire people? Are we paying too low? And then the third leg is the market data. So hopefully all those three things align. But I think to be competitive, you have to find the balance between, market data, career pathing, and being able to hire and keep folks. And that's what we've tried to help enable with the tool some of our reports. But ultimately, I think it comes down to, what's the pay philosophy for the organization and how are you supporting that with data? And then also kind of just with understanding how the organization is.
So
Yeah, and I think,
go ahead, Sam.
oh, so that I think that's the big thing is that as practitioners, we're spending so much time. If we don't have systems like this, we're spending so much time just doing grunt work, and that we don't get to the real strategic elements. So I know, Howard, you've have the privilege of working with Barclays and JP Morgan and a lot of these big firms. How did they had a big comp team to do these pieces? Do they have systems like this that would help them out?
It was funny. A lot of the work was still being done in spreadsheets. Some of the organizations started building their internal databases that facilitated it. But by and large, there was a lot of hours spent managing it through the spreadsheet process. Yeah, very, very labor intensive, and very easy to not catch errors in formulas and calculations. And then a whole nother process as people say, well, I want to move the person from this position to this position, or the person's getting a promotion this year and I want to look at them relative to where they should be now versus where they were. So all of that, again, very, very, labor intensive.
Yeah. So I think that they're really giving the power to comp consultants so they can really do the consulting piece and having that data available. So I'm right now, is it okay if I share the little bit of screenshot of your system there, Justin?
Yeah,
to show
absolutely.
some of the analytics that can be generated from a system like this.
Yeah,
So let
definitely.
me just quickly share here. If you could just tell us, what this is and how this helps practitioners.
Yeah, and I think Howard made a really good point. And a lot of it comes down to educating your stakeholders and setting expectations to understand comp. So one of the things that we really wanted to do from my lens as a practitioner was, I want to make sure that folks understand how their pay practices or their pay philosophies are actually impacting people and how people are paid within a role. So we built these dashboards. So every job has a dashboard, every employee has a dashboard, even every salary survey, row of data in a survey has its own dashboard. And this one that you have pulled up here, this one is the job dashboard. So what you can't see behind this, what you can't see specifically from this screenshot, is that everything here is customizable. And so when I say they're customized, I mean, you can drag and drop the tiles to put them in the order you want them to be in, kind of emphasize the ones that you think are most important. But you can also turn them on and off. So in addition to the 6 tiles that you see right here, I think there's another roughly 18 or 19 additional tiles that go into some demographic reviews of the jobs. So we can break out, by ethnicity, by gender, by department, by average pay. But also, I mean, one of the things that I specifically like about this particular report is the market value. And what that one, it's the top center donut chart. And what that shows is really essentially the pay mix based on the market data that we have assigned, or we've assigned to this particular role. So in this one, you can see that the base salary is 51,000, almost 500. And then there's this, it looks like roughly a 10% bonus component that brings it up to 56, 57,000. And there's a very small equity component based on the surveys. So I think that's always a really helpful tool. The other one I thought was fantastic, actually, is the one right below. It's the salary and years in job. So one of the things I would always look at with recruiting managers or hiring managers to figure out, what do we need to pay somebody? Or we think we're paying this role too much or too little. It's looking back at the compression and finding out, if we look at all the employees that we have in this particular job, let's take a look to see what their pay is in relation to how long they've been in that role. And a lot of times what you would find, especially in high tech markets like the Bay or Seattle, is that you would have a lot of data engineers or software engineers or STEM roles, essentially, where you would start to see that graphic where folks would be actually paid higher than the more tenured employees. And that was really reflective of the fact that the market was moving faster than merit adjustments. Mm-hmm. And what this does is this report's not going to tell you that there is a problem. It's going to show you where things are and give you the ability to drill into looking at those employees more closely. Because what you might find is those employees that you just hired that are being paid more, they've actually got 20 years of experience outside of your organization. So, maybe there was a philosophical change in that role, and now you need to bring on more, highly proficient, highly skilled employees than you currently had. That's not to say that you don't need to consider a market adjustment for those employees that have been in the role, because what's the cost if they leave? Because you really, as a practitioner, it's foolish to pretend that employees don't talk about pay. So you always want to be aware of those kind of disparities before employees are, and then kind of have a plan for how you're going to address those if those things do come up. And that's a lot of what these reports are designed to do, is through the lens of a practitioner, through the lens of a HR partner, identify and strategize and plan out how you can adjust your pay practices to really make sure that they're reflective of the organization, what the organization wants to do with pay.
Yeah, it's so funny. Just a quick story. I mean, I was at a recent client that their engineers decided that they were all going to get together, and they got everybody's approval. They said, "Hey, we're going to share everybody's salary," and so one guy out of the team shared everybody's, all the engineers' salary. So we talked to all of them. They just put it all on an email and sent it out to the entire company. And so, yeah, there's some of those organizations that demand transparency, or the employees are seeming to demand transparency in some of these things. So there's a lot of different things going on. Yeah. But one thing I wanted to mention, I mean, just that you were saying, a big issue. I mean, it's so common that we hear that, oh yeah, we're hiring people at higher rates than people have been here for 10 years. So the salary in years of the job I'm seeing down here, and that's so true. I mean, some practitioners out there, they go, oh well, we've had 3 or 4% merit increase every year, and so they're just applying that straight across the organization without thinking about how job growth, or certain jobs, are growing at faster rates.
Right.
And tools like this can show you that certain job families are growing faster than others. And so a 3% merit or a market adjustment, is not going to crack it for a lot of positions. We need to look at things a little bit more refined.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a study, I can't recall the exact numbers, but there was a study not too long ago in the Seattle market. And what someone had done was they looked at survey data over the last 7 or 8 years, I think, for high-tech roles, and then kind of more general roles. So your high-tech roles being your software engineers, data scientists, machine learning kind of folks. And then they looked at the general roles, which, finance, HR, legal. And they found that the roles over a course of 7 years, and the high-tech roles, like the STEM roles specifically, had, I think, grown 42% or something around there, compared to 22 or 23% for those general roles. So I think you can get really complicated with how you want to create market or merit matrices, but I think you really need to consider not only just a 3% merit increase, but also where is the market growing more quickly, and how are you keeping up with the market? And that could be through different pay adjustments or market adjustments, or changing the pools or the budgets for specific groups. I think it really kind of goes back to the department, but over time, if you're not aware of those things and keeping up with them, it is going to create troubles for you. And that's one of the things we're adding right now is year-over-year analysis of market data. So that's a functionality that we're currently have in progress. So hopefully having that released in the next month or two. But
just switching gears a bit, Justin. So yeah, recognizing this tool will be a great improvement. How does the compensation, folks make the case and get business approval and budget approval to purchase software?
And so I think the greatest value comes from when you have the most data for a tool like this. Because instead of having to consolidate 1 or 2 surveys, if you're consolidating 3, 4, 5, 6 surveys, I think you get huge data a huge value out of that. Because now not only is everything, are you saving time from creating a market match? I can create a market match in under a minute. I think I have a video of the website where I walk through market pricing like an accountant role. And I think it takes about 45 seconds to pull in multiple matches to create that market composite. And so I think that, I mean, that obviously creates a huge value add. But then if we go back and think of the time that, you know, comp folks are spending throughout the year, they're participating in salary surveys. Well, we can streamline that through our salary survey submission piece. They're going through and they're having to update their matches every single year when they get new market data. So basically starting from scratch. You don't have to do that with the comp tool. We can load in the new salary surveys and swap that out with the old data. So all of a sudden your matches are instantly updating as you're getting new comp information. The other thing that I think comp folks, especially for small to mid-sized companies, spend a lot of time doing is analytics and reporting. So I know for myself personally, I was spending between 8 to 12 hours a month developing C-suite reports. So one of the things that we wanted to do is really kind of automate that. So as soon as the data is updated in the software, which you can do in under 5 minutes, really, you can actually rerun all these reports for your C-suite that will give you demographic breakouts. It will show you where your employees are tracking to market, show you kind of how the jobs are comparing to market, different career pathing opportunities, and how those align to market. And I think not only does the tool make you more competitive in the market or give you the ability to be more competitive, straight off the bat, it's going to free up a lot of time once you get the system set up, which typically takes about 3 days.
Yeah, so that's a big thing I've seen with a couple of our clients right now is that, we're all, due to what's going on in the pandemic, there's been cost pressures and so forth, and people being laid off and jobs lost has been a tragedy. But a lot of the times when core people are lost out of the team and those reports are no longer available, these reporting and questions get put on people of higher and higher levels. We have one client that is in the C-suite, and they're trying to put together reports for their organization. So it's a huge cost expense and time allocation from that person. And so a system like this is once it's set up and after a few days, it can deliver those reports at a click of a button, saving just hundreds of hours of time in each month. Very, very efficient. So I'm glad that these tools are out there.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we saw with a client recently was it was a consulting firm client, and they were looking at one of their companies they support. And we were onboarding and we were going through some of the, we have a demographic snapshot. I don't know, there's a gender report snapshot. If you have that graphic, we can bring that one up.
Sure. So here's all your reports.
Yep. Yeah, so there should be a gender dashboard. So we were looking at this with a company we had onboarded. And one of the reviews was, this report specifically. This is fictitious data, but what you can see in that bottom left corner is what we've done is we've actually broken out pay categories by gender. And what we saw in this particular company was similar to this report, though this one's a bit more exaggerated. But what we saw was women overwhelmingly occupied those lower pay bands. So the higher you moved up into the pay bands, similar to what we see in this report, the fewer women you saw. And that was stunning to the client, because I don't think that the client had any idea that their pay practices or their promotional practices were ostensibly moving men into higher paid roles than women more quickly. And again, I don't think this is intended to identify that there are issues. It's really a snapshot of what does the organization look like by gender. And we also have the same report like this for ethnicity. So it's a nice way to kind of quickly look to see, how are our pay practices impacting folks right now in different groups of people.
Yeah.
So this one actually breaks it out by male to female. There's the generational divide. So you can see kind of as a company, where do our employees sit from an age perspective? What's the breakout of comp ratio by male and female? And then even kind of there's the tenure and years in job scattergram on the top left. And you can also drill into this, into different departments, job families, subfamilies, all kinds of things.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that one of the things we see a lot is that if it's not a pay practice issue or internal bias, or it could also be the lack of certain types of talent programs that are not available in organizations that can cause distributions like this. So it's great to have a way to at least identify that an issue exists. I'm sorry, Howard, you were going to say something?
Having this visual is just so impactful, because in a quick snapshot view like this, you can easily start to identify issues that need looking into. Not necessarily problems, but at least it points you in the direction of, what's going on here? Do we need to dig deeper? So this is fabulous.
Right, and you have some other ones on here as well. I want to share. I think that you have this. Let's see, this next one, compression report. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what we've got here is this is a report that is designed to understand how are managers and their subordinates being paid. And so what you see is there is all those dots on the right side represent a direct report to the manager on the left side. And essentially what we see is as those employees move towards that vertical line, the 100% line, that's the closer they're moving to their manager's pay. And so for some different roles, it might be just fine to have managers making less than their direct reports. Mm-hmm. In some particular situations, that makes sense. This isn't to suggest that there's anything wrong. It's just to suggest there's something that we might want to look at. Mm-hmm. And what you can do with this particular report is you can actually filter based on what level of a manager's pay do you want to look at. So if you want to only see those employees or those managers that had employees making 90% of their salary, you can quickly filter on those to see what those are. Same is true for if you want to see managers or with direct reports making more than them, you can filter on that as well. And what's nice about these reports too, with any of these reports, is since they are all powered by Tableau, you can put them on your laptop or put them on your iPad, walk into a meeting with the C-suite, and instead of having a piece of paper you're looking at that you maybe emailed in a PowerPoint, you can actually have these interactive tools to where now the manager or someone can look at it and actually click on that dot, see exactly who it is, and pull up some of the key information about them. So how long have they been in the role? What's their performance rating? What's their title? All kinds of information you can drill into. So you can really go from 30,000 feet down to 30 feet.
Yeah, I mean, this really increases your impactfulness on the organization and showing what you can really deliver as a professional. So yeah, and like you said, there's certain situations where you might have a compression or people paid in subordinate positions that are above the manager, and that can be completely appropriate now if we have these dual career tracks and people that are showing their expertise in a subject and so forth. But some companies are really concerned about this, and it can show the fact that when we're looking at our structure management, that we're not growing our management structure fast enough compared to our individual contributor structure, right? So it can be very important.
Justin, let's say we get the approval and now we're in the process of looking at the various tools that are out there and the various vendors. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions as to what companies should be asking when looking at various solutions and vendors that are out there?
Yeah, so and I think it's important to do the research, understand kind of what it is you're getting, because software like this is a commitment. Most folks won't let you try before you buy. As a practitioner, I've also recognized kind of some of the pain points and some of the things that make really kind of investing or committing to a software kind of scary. So one of the things that we wanted to do was make this a really pain-free process that allows you to try it before you buy it. So we give everybody a 30-day trial on the software to get in there and test to see if it actually works out well for them. In some cases, what we'll do is we'll set up the software so they can actually use it for 30 days to see what works. Sometimes with consulting firms, what we'll do is we'll set it up so they can use it for a project to see if it's going to work and meet their needs. Because a lot of software is moving to longer term commitments. So 3-year commitments are really pretty typical now. We do 1-year contracts. So we give you 30 days to give it a shot, and then you give you the 12 months to give it a shot. Just because as a practitioner, that was important to me. Is I don't want to be stuck with something because I signed a contract. I want to be using something because it's actually providing a significant value. And that's really kind of one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we're doing. But the other thing to keep in mind is demos for these softwares are made to be successful. No one's going to give you a demo of the software not working very well. So I think that's one of the really important things to consider when you're looking at any kind of HR software. And since we can really typically onboard and set up a new company in 3 days or less, there's not a huge amount of commitment other than filling out the templates to get over to us so we can set your data up. And most companies are actually able to set that up, fill out the templates first try. I think the last 4 out of 5 that we've set up have deployed it within 3 days and on the first try. So that's always been really important to me, is making these things simple. So our templates have all these different check files to say, this row is going to work, this row might not work. Here's the specific reason why it won't work. So as you're creating everything that is sent over to us, you already know if the data is going to load into the system properly. So we've done a really good job doing that. As you're going through the process, what we've also found is that sometimes, the sales cycle can be long, surprisingly long. So also be thinking ahead of when you want to implement a solution like this, because what we have found is that, a lot of companies will talk to the comp or the HR team and do the demo. And a week later, we have a verbal agreement that, yeah, this is the right solution for me. And then it will go to the finance team to get budget approval if it's not already approved, or then it will go to the legal team or the IT security team. And right now, especially what we're finding is with everybody moving to cloud-based solutions, because of a lot more remote work, IT reviews are taking a lot longer than they used to. So we have a security white paper that we send off whenever it's ready to go, whenever it's, that part of the process begins. But we also answer questions pretty frequently, directly working with the IT security teams. But legal also is oftentimes a pretty overwhelmed right now with a lot of things that are happening. So be mindful that sometimes these softwares, even if you say yes, and we say we can set it up in 3 days, there may be other things that need to happen within your organization to actually get everything deployed. And sometimes that can extend, quite literally can extend from a yes, from 3 days to 3 months, just because of the amount of time and review that has to go in for our organization to make sure everything's meeting the standards set forth by other parts of the company.
Great, thank you. Sam, we can't hear you.
So then we see that a lot when companies don't have their readiness, internal readiness needs to be in place to make sure that these systems are installed quickly and so forth. But we were talking about ROI, and this is actually for a presentation I'm doing tomorrow. And I just thought it might be good to share because I did bring up this statistic earlier. And but this is just about how some of these tools can impact a business. This particular one client, this was the installation of a complete career architecture. So it was not just, it was pay structure, including with career paths and so forth. And so there are a lot of factors leading to this cost savings, but they went from a 27% turnover rate to 21%. And when you just hear those numbers, you're like, oh, well, that's great, and so forth. But when you put dollars to it and see what's actually, the savings of your company, it really supports making sure that we're doing compensation right, and having these systems, making sure that we have competitive pay correctly targeted, and we're creating a structure for career advancement and retention, attraction. And we keep more people. The amount of savings, the ROI in these systems is just huge. So I just wanted to point that out since I had this slide ready to go.
And I think that's something that oftentimes gets forgotten by some companies, is how important career pathing actually is in terms of keeping folks engaged and retained. One of the things, a similar story, Sam, a company I was working with as an in-house practitioner, they had this tremendous turnover rate in the Bay. And so what we did was we looked around and found out that, the employees have no idea what the next step is or how to get to the next role. So we spent 6 months developing job descriptions for every single role that was down there, conducting the market review, and then making market adjustments and putting people in the right roles. And then also spending the time to work with those employees so they understood, hey, I'm a 2 right now. here's what I need to do to become a 3. And also what's a business justification for a 3. So I think setting those expectations was tremendously helpful. And similar to the results that you just shared, we were able to knock the turnover rate down significantly the next year. And so I just think that can't be said enough how important career pathing is, in addition to fair pay, equitable pay, competitive pay. And those are all huge components of it.
Right. I think this piece that you showing here on this screenshot shows where people are outside the range of positions, right?
Yeah, and I think this is, I was very passionate about, if we have a minimum, we should pay the minimum. And I think there are oftentimes reasons where it may make sense, but I took a pretty hard line on it and said, if I'm going to develop these pay structures and we're going to have these ranges and we're going to call that the minimum, I need a better justification for why anyone would ever be below what we said is the minimum.
Yeah.
And oftentimes with any company, I think sometimes it can be really expensive to move folks to the minimum. But how expensive is it going to be when you train that person for 6 to 12 months in a role where they're being significantly underpaid, and then a competing company down the street picks them up, gives them a 30% increase, and they're still 10% below the market? You just trained their talent for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Well, I know we're getting towards the top of the hour here, and we're going to open up for any kind of questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat function here. We can address those now. And then also, like I said, Justin's going to stay on for anybody that's interested in going through a quick demo of the system. So feel free. But I wanted to mention that also. Like I said, we'll make everybody on the call aware of these compensation discussions on reward systems and different types of reward systems. We're talking specifically about comp here. We're going to talk about recognition platforms. We're going to talk about compensation pay management systems and a lot of different systems in the reward space and future discussions. And so we'll keep you informed of that going on. Also, I want to make sure that I mentioned the polls again. The poll, if you want to click on the poll and select some time with any of the people on the call here, or go through a more detailed discussion with Justin on his system, you can go ahead and do that. All right, but before we move on, or as we are taking questions and so forth, I want to bring up this next piece, this next slide that we have. Is, if I can get this to pop up. Hold on just one second. Oh, here it is. So tell us a little bit about this report, Justin.
So this is actually one of my favorites, because a report just like this saved me a tremendous amount of work that I think would have been actually negatively impactful to the business that I was working with. So I was working for a company that was acquired by another larger company, and that company used a pure market-based approach for determining the pay range for jobs. And I've written white papers about the benefits of traditional pay structures, so I am a big advocate for salary structures that have a mid and max, a 10 to 12 point midpoint progression, 40 to 60% range spread, your traditional pay structures. So anyway, what they wanted us to do was take all of our jobs and convert them to a market-based pay range. And I said, we can do that, but we have no idea what that's going to mean to the organization if we do make those changes. We've taken, a lot of great care to make sure that, we're being competitive, which doesn't always align to the market data. So what we wanted to do was really understand, if we take the approach, which was to use the 25th, 50th, and the 75th percentile to define the range, how would that impact our employees and their career pathing opportunities against the current structures that we had in place? So what this report does in particular is it takes that exact same approach and it overlays the market data, which you can see with the chevrons and the asterisks and the horizontal lines over top of the pay structures, which are represented by those pay bands, or the solid blue bands. And so what you can see here that I think is kind of particularly telling is, if you look at the administrative assistant 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can see that the market data moves around a bit, but overall I would say that the pay structure is pretty well aligned to the market data. Where things get a little bit different and a little bit out of line is if you look at the supervisor, the executive assistant, and the administration manager, especially the supervisor and the EA, you can see very clearly that the market data is not aligned to the pay structures. And this is where the art came to the pay. Because what you can see is even though that market data is not completely aligned, you still have this really smooth career progression. And what that allowed us to do was you can still pay people anything within those ranges. As you can see that the 50th percentiles are captured by most of the ranges. And what this allowed us to do was make sure that we had good career pathing that made sense and didn't create these incredibly significant jumps to push people into the market rates. Mm-hmm. And this isn't to suggest that this was always what would be the case. I mean, this really came down to the business needed to do things like this versus aligning purely to the market data.
Yeah, so this is really powerful, but also one thing that anybody that's worked with market data a lot understands that there's going to be, if you're doing direct market matching and trying to pay a role on this, you're missing a lot of the picture. I mean, there is, and when you have to look at the entire job family, or you're going to miss leveling bias. A lot of these jobs, they'll say, well, the executive assistant has to be at this level and so forth. And they'll actually bring in bias into the data. So you have to look at various different levels to look at the career path. So I like how this report shows the market data placed over your internal bands to show alignment. That's great.
Yeah, and I think it also gives you a really good indication of, like, if you look at the administrative assistant 4 role, well, the market data for that, like the pay range actually goes well beyond the 90th percentile of the market data here. Mm-hmm. So I think that's also something that can be considered, is if you have someone high in the range, I mean, just be aware that you're paying them over the 90th percentile, which may make perfect sense, but it's just one thing to be aware of.
So Justin, we have a question from Sophie about the advantage of a system like this. I mean, right now there's a lot of remote workers that and companies are starting to send spreadsheets, or password protected or otherwise, home or across the internet in a lot of ways. And what are some of the ways that a system like this can improve security?
So I actually recently found out that Excel spreadsheets, the password protection, not that great. You can Google how to, you can Google and YouTube within 5 minutes, learn how to remove a password off of a protected worksheet on an Excel spreadsheet. That blew my mind. That was like, wow, that's problematic. I think to Sufine's question of, what's the advantage of a tool like this is everything is already done for you in terms of all the reports. So once you update the data, all the data flows through the software. So you have all these kind of advanced reports that are built up immediately. With respect to kind of thinking of like cloud-based solutions, I think that's just really the way that things are moving. So right now, all the updates are immediate. All the things that you see on here are immediately available to you. So we add features all the time, and we don't charge additional prices for those. So we added a job description manager, I guess, a month ago or so. And that's something that comes with the tool free now. But if I think about the security piece of it, when we kind of talk through the Excel spreadsheets, in Excel, most people are not going to know to go in that they can, crack a spreadsheet's password. But you, as the person that's putting that information into an Excel spreadsheet, should be aware that that is something that can happen. Mm-hmm. So with our tool, what we've done is the first hire we made was a privacy or a security engineer from the Department of Defense with the security clearance, worked for multiple startups developing security practices, and ultimately went and worked for Amazon Web Services developing security practices there, which, by the way, is where we're hosted. So security is the most important thing for a tool like this.
I think there's a heightened sense around privacy practices with regard to data, and it still amazes me how companies provide so much personal information about employees on password protected spreadsheets, and as you said, they can easily be hacked.
Yeah, Amazing. Yeah, it's true. I know that, and sometimes I mean some of these small startups and fast growing companies just haven't put the infrastructure or the policies in place to really control security well, and so systems like this can help them go leaps and bounds to try to prevent their employees from making critical mistakes. And you know, I don't know. We've all had that panic and fear that onset that goes, oh my gosh, did I send that to the right person? Or when when you're sending an email out, and so you know the amount of pressure and suffering and that we can put on our employees by not having the right systems or policies in place is intense. I know we're at the top of the hour, and so we should start moving into taking a little bit of a closer look at Justin's tool for those that want to stay on. Feel free to continue to ask questions through the chat. We'll go ahead and address those as we're going. But Justin, do you want to go ahead and take over the screen, and perhaps you can show us a little bit more details about your system and the specificities around that?
Yeah, let me see if, let's see. So I think I can share my screen like this. So let me know, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yep, you can.
So, you know, this is one of our dummy companies that we use for our demos, but, you know, we'll do kind of an abridged version. So what I'll walk through is really the survey library, conducting a market match, and then we can look at some of the standard reports, because I think those are really where you get some of the value, but I think we'll kind of walk through some of the major points. So I'll just walk through actually each page just briefly. So what we've done is we've broken everything up in the way I think most comp practitioners view the world. So you have our jobs, employees, reports. So we've got a custom reporting tool, standard reports, and advanced reports that are all powered by Tableau. Your survey library, a visualization of your salary structures, and then the market matching. And then there's settings where you can update your aging factors, add or remove users, modify currencies, share salary surveys if you're a consulting firm. So you can kind of set up one survey to be used for multiple clients. We can update the surveys so you can replace the 2020 data with 2021 data and maintain all your matches. And then you can actually import and export the data. So if you want to update those employees, it takes about 5 minutes for really anyone to do it once we kind of walk through that. But on the jobs page, you know, what we've tried to do is, there we go. What we try to do is keep everything really simple. So we know that most folks are familiar with Excel. So we actually tried to mirror a lot of the things that Excel does. So what you see is kind of, we have these tables. All of these gears represent different ways that you can group, sort, and filter on the data. All the gears that are these big white gears mean you can really modify what's included on these tables. So if I wanted to, you know, get rid of the target percentile, but bring in the department, you can make those changes there. And now you can see I've got department and job family, but we remove some things. There's also kind of these, you know, quick dashboards that you can see. So we bring up these, bring up the information to shows average salary against the base, you know, what's our distribution of pay, what's the rates for our market data that we've got included here. We can even jump in here and view the job descriptions. There's not one on this one, but you can always kind of go in and view, edit, and add job descriptions there. So that's kind of a high-level overview of the job dashboard. The employees dashboard is fairly similar. The employees page is fairly similar, where you can make modifications and include all this information. One of the things I really like about this page is you can actually import and bring in market data specifically tied back to every employee. So you can pull in market ratios or market indexes, you know, all the different percentiles for the market data. But then you can also really break out and look at additional information for employees based on what it is that you'd like to see. And all that updates and just kind of appears on this page as you add things in. You know, it's nice that you can export these as Excel files and PDF files. And all the employees also kind of have these different dashboards like that. So you can see exactly, you know, how an employee's pay mix is aligned to the market, where they are in comparison to their peers. But then you can even come in and look at these employee dashboards by clicking that review. And one of the things I mentioned is all these charts are editable and you can move things around. So this is nice because what you can do is when you create these reports that look like this.
And that's pretty cool, Justin. Does it when a user moves those tiles around, is it specific for their view, or does it change the view for everyone?
So that's a good question. So everything that you are doing to customize the pages is specific to you. So like Howard, if you didn't want to see this report, but Sam, you did, Howard, you can turn it off and it's not going to have Sam come in and turn it back on a couple of minutes later.
Quit that, Howard.
So, there's our employees page. We'll look at the reports in a second. But if I look at kind of the market matching piece of the software, this is where I think we can get a lot of value from actually creating these market composites. So what we've got here is a list of, these are all of our internal company's jobs. So you can select any job you want to price directly from here. And so what we'll do is we'll just grab one, I think that this is always kind of the risky part because I actually don't know which jobs we've priced. So if I were to grab like a finance database technician. So we can see that this job hasn't been priced yet because as we selected it, there's no market data associated with it down here. One of the things we can do is we can actually just come here and hit price this job. And it's going to say, it's going to give you this option to price these different versions. And essentially what a version is, it represents a pay market. So you can price every job X number of times, depending on how many salary structures you have. And the nice thing about that is once you price the job, it's actually going to associate that local market data or the relevant market data to the employees in those specific pay structures. So if you've got employees that are in Dallas and you've got employees in the same job in San Francisco, you can price the job once for Dallas and once for San Francisco, and it will tell you what that market rate for those specific employees is based on what their location or their structure is. But so since this one doesn't have any incumbents, we can just price it for, we'll say the Seattle version. And it's just going to tell us to go find our market matches. And one of the things I really like about this right here is what it does is it brings us to our survey library where you can actually look through all of these different market data points, or you can, you can actually filter all of these different data points on your survey library. But one of the things we've done is so I had to have this put here because I would always forget what job I was pricing during demos. So you ever get up to go get coffee, it's going to be a reminder right here so you know what job you're pricing. But what you can do is you can come here, and if I want to type in, database technician. So as you start typing, just kind of like Google does as you start typing, it's got this, smart or this autocomplete that's going to tell you all the different job titles you have in your survey based on what you're typing in. So you can see there's database administrator, database design. So if I actually start to, go database D, it's going to get rid of everything that's database administrator. So it's a really quick way to be able to find different market data points without actually committing a search. So with this one's a database tech, if I want to just assign that to, this tech role right here, maybe.
Yeah, so this is super helpful. So like instead of the old days when you're going through different books or open up different files in your system. I mean, here you can just get it all together and all in one source.
Yeah. And so what happens is when you click on the survey data over here, it brings up the details on the right side. And the details are going to include the job description and then all the different scopes below. But again, you see this big white gear, it means you can actually modify this page. So you can actually change if I don't want to see all this different information. Maybe I just want to see the base information here when I'm pricing the jobs. I can pick up to 5 different data points here to include there, and it's going to automatically change the information here. So depending on what your approach is for market pricing or how you determine that it's a good match, will kind of enable you to be able to filter and pick what you're selecting.
Right.
But in this one in particular, so what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and select, we'll connect this database administrator 1 role. I'll hit connect, and it's just going to say, awesome, you've connected that survey. Are you done? Do you want to keep going? And what we can do is we can say we're going to keep searching. So we'll keep searching. And let's see if we come to, there's the Culpeper survey. So we can look at maybe a, associate database administrator. We can connect that one. We can find one more maybe. So we can come back to our, see if we can't pull compensation HR group. This survey actually comes included with this with the tool.
Oh, really?
So we could pull like a database design role, and we can actually just connect that here as well. And we'll go ahead and say we're finished matching, because now what we've done to create this market composite is we've selected 3 different market data points from 3 different surveys. So we can hit, finish matching. And it's going to take us back to this page. And so what it does is it tells us that we haven't completed assigning the weights to the matches, that we need to add those up to 100%. So in a release that's coming up later this week, it's going to automatically tell you, it's going to count for you. So it'll tell you when you've got 90%, 85% or whatnot. So that'll make it a little bit easier. But for the Radford survey, what we can do is we can select it. And as I select on that market data, it's going to give me that information. So it's going to show me the number of orgs, the number of incumbents, the base information, all the different data points, the 50th percentile. Same for Culpeper and same for the Comp HR group. What I can do is I can actually, do a, 30% weighting here. Can do, we'll do a 40% weighting here. We can do a 30% weighting here. And as soon as that adds up to 100%, you lose that warning sign and it's automatically calculating all the market data here.
Great.
And then what we can do is actually, if we want to add a premium, because of the different level of responsibility, you can simply add 10% there. If I want to apply a discount, it's just negative 10%. And it's automatically calculating everything we're doing up here.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can even add, a geographic differential, 10% there. So, so we've got the ability to apply premiums and discounts as well as geographic differentials. And so once we've kind of gone through that, this is, now we've kind of created that market composite and we can see what the market values are. So if we kind of take that, do zeros, these out, you can really kind of start to see how this is impacting the pay practice or the total market value up here. But one of the things I think is really one of the coolest features that we kind of talked on recently is the ability to send out the, oops, not that one, send out the market data for review. So if I hit send for review, what it will allow me to do is actually choose which of these surveys I want to send out for a review. And I can come in here at send, and I can put in anybody's email address. So whether it be a client or a business stakeholder, I can put their address in right here. And what it will do is it will send them an email that has the job description, a free form text box, and that drop down where they can select how good of a match it is. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I was working with in-house, if I didn't give someone a deadline, it would probably never happen. So what we can also do is we can put a deadline on it and say, hey, Sam, hey, Howard, I need you guys to review this job no later than Friday and send me back your feedback. And by the time you get that email, it's going to tell you what the deadline is. And then after that link has expired, or after that time has expired, the link will no longer work, which is kind of a nice feature. It's an optional feature, but it definitely helps to kind of put a little bit of pressure on folks to actually get back their feedback to you. So I'll just
If I had this earlier in my career, I'd get 10 years of my life back.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
But one of the other features we have that's kind of nice is, we've got the market composite report, and this is also customizable. So we had a client that they said, hey, Justin, this report looks great, but one thing we never want to do is we don't ever share equity data with our internal stakeholders. So can we want to share this report, but we don't want to share all of it. That's what we did. We actually said, that's a great idea. And what we did was we said, let's just make this so these standard fields or any of the fields, you can toggle them on and off. So I can turn off those, the equity components, hit submit, and what it will do is, did that screen pop up?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So what it does now is now I've got the market data or the market composite value here that shows base, total target cash, total cash. Here's the market matches that we selected, the weights. Here's what the breakout of those looks like. And then we can get into the really specific market data below to show, each individual market data cut down here. So these can be printed as Excel files as well as PDFs. So I think the PDFs look nice. The Excel files are great for running additional analysis. So I'll close that. So that's kind of the process for going through and actually creating market matches. One of the things that's nice too is it creates logs so you can see exactly who did what did they do, and when did they do it. And something else, one thing too is, so if you think of the idea that I said, you can create a market composite for every job or for every pay structure. One of the questions that always comes up is, well, does that mean I have to price my jobs 3 times each now? The answer is sort of, but not really. Because what we can do is we can actually copy the matches. So I can hit this copy matches button. And it's going to allow me to just pick a different version and hit submit. So it's the same job, different version, and we can just apply those weightings and premiums again. And so it really kind of helps to streamline and create those market composites more quickly. And in the future, in an upcoming release, we're going to also give you the ability to actually come here and change the scopes using a drop down here. So if you are using, Atlantic cut for everything, but want to use the same matches but different scopes for more local market data, you'll be able to copy and paste that over and then just select different scopes here, and will automatically update the market values based on the scope selection here. So we're really trying to make the market pricing process as fast and as streamlined as possible. And I'm going to jump over to the reports because we've got about 13 minutes left, but I didn't see if were there any questions about this process or anything.
No questions so far. Yeah.
Okay. And, I mean, Sam, how do you guys use this? I mean, in terms of being able to market price the jobs and come back with the data, how are you finding this is impacting your ability to market price the jobs quickly and kind of create those reports and visuals?
Well, yeah, the important thing is like you said, quickly, because there's a lot of times that you'll have, everybody seems to be doing everything last minute nowadays. They need data right away. So it's like, especially if you're getting something from an executive team member that there's maybe a retention concern or something like that, and they want data right away to make sure that they can check. And these reports you can pull something so quickly and do it a quick analysis to send it out without doing a lot of administration, and it's just such a time saver. So it's hugely important.
I mean, also the ability to kind of do what ifs. I mean, incredible time saving to to say, well, what if I do this? What if I do that? Or the ability to adjust the data like you just showed us is fantastic.
And like we were talking before, I mean, just the ability to be more strategic and look at trends, bring up things before they're an issue is very impactful to companies, especially as the market changes very quickly.
Yeah. Well, let me actually open up a couple of different canned reports that we have, the standard reports that look at some of those pay analysis. So let's see, where is the one I'm thinking of? So we've actually got a tool where you can, if we want to look to see what's the cost to move up our pay ranges by 2%, 3%, 5%. We have a tool right here in the software where what you can do is I select my pay structure that I'm considering. And what we've done is here's the pay structure, and every single one of these dots represents an employee. And what we actually went ahead and did was we actually overlaid performance ratings within those dots. So the different colors represent different pay range or performance ratings. So folks in green, higher performance ratings, folks not, lower performance ratings. So what you can actually see is what we can do is we can say, if we want to make it a cost adjustment of 5% to the Dallas pay structure, how much is that going to cost us to move everybody to the minimum? And so it's $2.7 million, which was, I think we've got about $2.3 million of folks under. So, an additional $400,000. Let's see if we go to San Francisco. So, similar pay increase for the San Francisco market, Seattle market, much more considerable. But what's nice is it actually will show us, the employees that are being impacted by those pay increases or by the range adjustments. So if we come down here and if we just did 2%, what's the impact there? Much different.
And that would be the cost to move them to the minimum, right? That's
correct. Yeah, which, and someone's pointed out those costs aren't required. But if you were to make those kinds of market adjustments, that would be the cost to move someone into those particular ranges.
Right.
Let's see. So that's one that I think is kind of a nice, quick, like, hey, what's it cost to do? What if we want to do this? What's the cost? Mm-hmm. Another one is market adjustment. So we have a market adjustment model, and let's see if we've got this one. Let me change to a different company. Actually, I think this is a better example of that particular report. So what we can do is we can actually include where employees are, And if we want to make an adjustment to, a particular market, so we want to say, let's say that, our Dallas is implementing a new minimum wage. So we can just simply click on Dallas specifically. And let's say that Dallas is increasing their minimum wage to, $40,000 per year. What's the cost to move all employees to $40,000? It's $4.1 million. So this, and it's 321 employees, $4.1 million. So it's a nice quick way to see exactly who those employees are, what's the minimum wage, what's their current salary, and what's the cost to move them into those salary rates.
Mm-hmm. And so Justin, tell us of the size of companies that would be good for this tool.
So we started, when I started the software, it was really designed for companies that were, 300 or so up to, 15 to 2,500. Our first customer was a Fortune 25 company.
Hmm.
So it's a big home improvement retailer that has, a lot more than 2,500 employees. So what we found is that really we can scale to all sizes. I would say that really there's not a size company that we can't support. What we have found is that we can actually even create the opportunity for companies with huge data sources or huge amounts of employees. I'm a big fan of things moving quickly. And sometimes I want to be able to make that decision of, is that field in that table important to me? Or is it faster that the page loads a couple of seconds faster? So what we can do with some of our pages is we can actually show you which pages might slow the page, or which fields might slow the page down a little bit, and give you the option to turn those fields on and off. So again, it's really customizable and really kind of focused on making sure that you can take advantage of the things that are important to you, whether it's having that specific data point on that page right there or the page loading faster. But I would say, for most of our companies, that are under 25,000 employees, it's not an issue whatsoever. But those companies that have over 100,000 employees, with any of these softwares, the more employees that you have, the slower it's going to go. But we give you the option to turn those things off, so you can kind of prioritize, some data over speed or speed over some data.
Mm-hmm. Great.
But yeah, so, and one of the things that I mentioned that we kind of talked about was the ability to take these reports into your C-suite and actually go from 30,000 feet to 30 feet. And so if we open this report up, this is that report that we looked at earlier. And kind of this is one of those things where you look at it, men are overwhelmingly occupying those higher paid roles. And so that may be something to consider, do we need to look at different kinds of, do we have an unbiased performance management process? Are we promoting, creating the same opportunities for all folks? Are our recruiting policies, our practices, are we targeting, women in STEM roles or those roles that are, paying higher? So again, this isn't something that suggests that there's anything wrong. It's just what things are, and you can kind of drill into it and make those decisions down the road. But one thing I love about these reports is with Tableau, everything you can drill into. So if I want to say, well, who's this guy that's been here for 50 years? I can come and look. Oh, that's Robert Summer. He's a police lieutenant's been around for 47 years. So what I think is really nice about this is you take these reports into a meeting with your C-suite because you want to say, here's the one thing I want to talk to you about. Inevitably on paper, what they're going to say is, yeah, but who's this guy? And who's this guy? And so what you can do is you can really just quickly, oh, well, that's the city manager. Of course that they're going to be the highest paid employee. And it's like, well, who are these two employees that have been here for such a long time, and who are they, and what's their role? You can drill into those things. If I want to see, how many folks do we, let me see the silent generation, and you can click on that, and it automatically is updating everything. So you can see those breakouts. If I want to see just, even just these employees here, everything kind of links together. So I think these reports and these graphics let you drill into the information, get really, really granular with everything you've got, using either these drop downs up here or actually just clicking on the data that you select down here.
Mm-hmm.
And what's nice too is these reports all can be downloaded as images, data files, Excel files, PDFs, or PowerPoints, exactly like what you see right here. So it's a really nice tool to be able to, again, going back to saving time, I can run through this, print everything up, put it into a PowerPoint, and now I've got my monthly report that goes to the executive team built out automatically.
Great.
A powerful tool.
We're getting really great feedback from your reports. here's one that we're working with that company. So this report was intended to really kind of show, based on our pay structures and our salary grades, where are employees falling. So we were walking through this with a client of ours, and we found that 90% of their employees in one pay structure were in a single grade. And that was eye-opening to them, because what we found was that was actually skewing a lot of reports that they were running. So they would see something like this, where in this report has the majority of employees in this grade 19. I mean, they had 90%, they had over 6,000 employees in that particular job, in one job in one grade. And through looking at this report, they said, not only is that, group in occupying one grade, they also have an average comp ratio of like 1.3.
Sure.
And so it was a question of, well, do we actually just want to go ahead and carve those out and create a separate structure for that particular job? Because it was a retail job in all of their different stores. Which, there was nothing wrong with it, but what they found was it was skewing the other reports. So what they ended up doing was separate. I think they're going to end up separating that particular job out so they can leverage better data and reporting analytics from tools like this.
Well, you guys, I know we're coming towards the last few minutes on the call here today. Is there anything else you'd like to show us that's top of mind?
I think the one other thing I like is these Pareto charts. So this report really, this is a very unique example of probably a company that's not paying correctly. But what you can see is you can really kind of get a quick view of how many employees are being paid under midpoint. In this particular case, this is kind of a ridiculous example, but 97% of employees are paid under the midpoint. But I think this is a really interesting report that you can run by different departments, different pay structures, to really see as a department, our average comp ratio may be 0.97, but what does that actually mean in terms of how far off are our employees? So I think, by overlaying some of these pieces, my goal is for anyone, not a comp person, anybody to look at these reports and quickly say, oh, I understand what this is telling me. I understand that there is or is not a problem. I understand exactly what the point of this report is. And that's really kind of what we tried to base all of our reports on. Is I'll hand it to someone that isn't a comp person or even an analyst and say, what do you think? And as soon as they can tell me what I wanted them to tell me or what I wanted them to take away from the report, that's when we know they're done. So that's really kind of been the premise and the design philosophy behind the majority of our reports.
That's great. Well, thanks. I know that there's a lot of information you shared today, Justin, and I encourage anybody that would like to learn more or go through a more detailed demo to reach out to Justin. He's a great guy. I love working with him. So,
Likewise.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for your time today and joining us here. So if you, like I said at the beginning of the call, we're going to have this presentation on the compteam.net website. And so you can we'll go ahead and pull up today's discussion there. It should be there in a few days. And then and we look forward to seeing you next time. Please tell your friends and have them join us. And next time we're going to be talking to Comtrack, who does pay management software, and next month. So they'll tell us how to streamline processes and ensuring that we can, managers can make pay recommendations for their employees in a very equitable way. So hope to see you then. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, Justin, again.
Thanks, guys. It was great to be here. Really appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.